Welcome to Construction Champions Podcast, where we are burning the house down and rebuilding it twice a week. I'm your host, Ron Nussbaum, and I am here to help you become the champion that you're meant to be. Along with our amazing guests along the way, we will provide you with the resources, the latest and greatest. You will sit down with disruptors in the construction industry. And my goal from day one has always been to change the mindset around the construction industry. No more where we let the 3% of bad apes dictate the entire reputation of Welcome back to Construction Champions Podcast. I'm Ron Nussbaum. I'm the founder and CEO of BuilderComs and a United States Marine Corps veteran, and I am your facilitator for all of these amazing conversations that we have. What we do on Construction Champions is it's like I'm sitting down having a cup of coffee with some of the most influential minds, leaders, people around the construction industry that want to do one thing. They want you to be better, and they want you to become that champion that you're meant to be. And today is no different. Marcy, it is fantastic to have you here with us today.
Thanks, Ron. I appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
I am as well. This is one of my favorite things I do, so I'm always excited when I get to talk to somebody on the podcast. So before we dive into it, why don't you introduce yourself to all the champions out there listening?
Sure. Marcy Sagal. I'm the principal and founder of MSA Interiors, and we specialize in multifamily, senior housing, affordable housing, student housing, and we also work in healthcare and hospitals and work with a lot of different stadiums and data centers, kind of the gambit. But the big crux of what we do is apartments and multifamily new construction.
Awesome. This is going to be an amazing conversation. I know you're going to bring a different perspective than what we've had on the show before just by your resume. So I'm going to dive right in there. I'm going to ask you the $1 million question, and that is, what makes a construction champion?
I love that question because the first thing I say is design it right the first time, right out of the gate. Save yourself some money. Okay. If you design it right and you know how to look at details, you're not going to make mistakes while it's under construction. We'll have already planned for everything, and it saves everyone a lot of money.
I would agree with that. But at the same time, design it right the first time is definitely an area where the industry lacks a little bit, or we can be lax when it comes to that.
Yeah. I have some good stories with that. So we have, obviously been doing this. I've been doing this for a long time, and at least 25 plus years for multifamily. And you learn a lot as you are in the trade. You learn more about do's and don'ts. And so what we like to do is have our documents done. Our documents are done perfectly. And I say that because we review them and we review them and we review them. And the biggest part about not only reviewing them is to, once we design, you want to make sure that you have coordination calls. And that involves the general contractor, the architect, the engineer, everybody involved that is making big decisions to make sure that we're all coordinating and going down the same path so that we don't have any surprises. Okay. And in our projects, we have a lot of repeat clients. And the reason we have a lot of repeat clients is because we don't make construction document mistakes. And I mean that because we do all the elevations, all the space planning, all the detailed drawings. It's super important to coordinate that with the architect and to coordinate that not only with the architect, but with the engineers. Excuse me, a bit of a cough today. And I say that it's so important to get these documents right because it's what we build our foundation on. It's what we build our structure on. And while the architect is doing the document for the building, we're coordinating all of our detailed drawings on the inside of the building with their set.
Mm.
So we're working in the same platform that they're working on, which in our office is typically Revit. And if they're working in a particular year of Revit, then we work in that same year. And we're coordinating, updating, and communicating on a weekly basis and a weekly call for any of our large scale projects. And so with that, I would say that we typically, sorry about that, typically we have a team of people that are doing the coordination. And with that means making sure that electrical placements are put in the right place, such as TVs, fireboxes, anything that you can typically have as a surprise right in the middle of your big art wall. So we do look at all of those details, and we really try to coordinate all of the details and finite minutia of a job. And that really saves our client money in the long run. No one wants to get into those correction details once you're under construction.
No, no one does, especially the client. The client definitely doesn't. Doing this, as long as you have, what you're talking about doing, I think is starting to become more commonplace, especially as I'm having these conversations. People are getting all the stakeholders in, the general contractors, everybody to have these meetings, but it's still not the norm yet. And I bet as you've developed this over the years here, you have probably fought an uphill battle getting, especially the people from the industry, to get on these calls before the project's even started. What has that been like? And what's some advice you can give people that are wanting to do this, but feel the pushback of trying to get everybody involved?
So if everybody doesn't want to get involved, I recommend that you absolutely do a bi-weekly call with the architecture group. So if you're the interior design group, you want to have a bi-weekly call or construction group with the architect and interior design group so that you can, at the very least, even if you don't have everyone on every other week, you can at least set up a schedule of calls and everyone can agree to that schedule. And then you may not be needed on that call because they may not be discussing anything that's, valid for what you're working on. So if someone is putting those calls out, and typically it's the architecture group in our case that we prefer them to put out an agenda, and then if the call is going to be an hour and a half, 2 hours, we know that will be the last half hour of the call or the last hour of the call. We can sit on it and we can be doing work while we're sitting on that first hour, not having to pay as much attention as we typically would. And we recommend that you at least coordinate calls at least biweekly, even if it's just a small group of people. And then you can expand that group as the project grows and as it moves along down the path of construction.
Mm. Yeah, so not just having cause to have cause,
Right.
but having a very structured
Yeah.
outline to what needs to be touched on in a timeline to go with that. I love that because too often, just like with meetings, we can just have a meeting and we don't have any structure to it and nothing really gets accomplished. It's the same thing when you jump on these calls. If you're not saying this, we need these outcomes to occur because of this. And I think that also helps people get involved because they know it's just not, it's 2 hours of like people debating stuff that doesn't even involve me.
Exactly. And we've all sat on those calls. And so typically what we like to do is have a more structured agenda so that we can say we're going to be discussing structural, we're going to be discussing architecture, we're going to be discussing ID, interior design, and we're going to be discussing lighting. And within that, we would be discussing, updates of schedules, any kind of things that need to change or coordinate better, and have some sideline conversations that might involve, or getting a new set of plans that might have to be updated because of something that was changed. mechanically, when we get involved in these projects, we get involved very, very early, and we do a lot of space planning of the big entire structure, along with the architecture group, while we're sort of figuring out what spaces need to be activated and how we're going to activate them. And we're giving the client many options on those space plans to kind of see, hey, how do you want this building to look? What feels right for you? And then we give them a lot of options in that. And once we decide on that option, then the architect and the engineer have to kind of figure out, okay, now where are we going to put mechanical? We have to kind of look at that. Where are we going to put the mechanical rooms? Where are we going to put any kind of columns or structural holds? That's what we look at. And once we have a better idea very early on of what that space plan might be best, then we can kind of work around the details of the structure. And that's how we find getting involved really early on helps benefit everybody from a cost perspective. So that's what we get involved in early on.
Yeah, and not just the cost, but the overall how things flow and work. Design cannot be underestimated. I remember we were doing we had a single story house. We were putting a second story on, tearing the garage, adding on the garage. In the first meeting we had, I had the architect who was going to be drawing up the plans, our builder who was going to actually have to do the work we decided on, and a design lady that was going to bring what she wanted to reality in a way that made sense. Because a lot of times, if you have an architect and a builder working together and there's nobody there to look at the design and how does this truly function, you end up with houses built by people like me. And it might be practical, it might get the job done, but it could have been a lot better. And that was not the norm. I had brought these three parties in independently because I knew I've been around and I knew what, like, we just couldn't say this is what we wanted and expect an architect and a builder to bring that to fruition in a way that worked. Like, we were on a lake, we had a view, like, you want stuff to ebb and flow. And I'll tell you that she saved us so many times on so many different things that nobody was thinking about. And just, I highly recommend it. We talked about it on the show before. It's like, if you're going down this road, that's the three critical people. You need somebody that can put the plan together and somebody that can build the plan, but you have to have somebody that actually makes sense of the plan in the space, or else you can tell everything ends up like a hospital.
Yeah. It's interesting. This morning, I was at a very interesting job site. I have a client who's part of a group of developers that we work with pretty regularly every year. And he happened to decide to buy a 130-year-old farmhouse. I'm sorry, 130 acres with a old farmhouse on the property and old barns. So we started coordinating right from the beginning with the architect, space planning with the architect, making decisions with the client for the architect to kind of put into his plans. And we're dealing with a very old structure. So today it had been taken down to the studs. So we did a walkthrough and we had to make some changes because we didn't know what was going to be behind the plaster walls. So we did have to make a couple changes, nothing major, but it was really great that the client, the architect, the builder, and myself met out on the job site to kind of do a walkthrough and have a conversation about some of those things that we could make some small changes to.
Yeah, and it puts a face and a voice to it. If we aren't having these meetings, it's like, wow, oh, the design person who is just a figure of imagination, or the architect who just wants to do. There's no, like, we don't have this relationship where there's faces and there's voices and names to it, which allow us to become more collaborative on a project, other than I just want my way because I think that's how it should be done. Instead, it's like, okay, well, I understand you're a person and this is why I believe it should be done this way, even though it might be harder, but this is the end outcome we want to create. And it makes it easier when everybody's together, looking at each other and working as a team instead of just shooting off emails saying, that's absurd. I can't do that.
Yeah, no, it was super helpful. We got a lot accomplished and we made some decisions quickly as a team today. We have a young couple that's taking this historical building and, developing it into their home. I've worked with them from a business standpoint because they're clients of mine. And so I do have an understanding of what their style is and what they like. And, they like things very classical. And so we were picking everything from, base to trim and taking a look at that actually in the space. And, I think base and trim, people always have a hard time with that because it's complicated. And I was trying to explain to them, we wanted to really pick something that's stock that doesn't look like stock. And we also want to pick something that's sort of like from the period without, you know, kind of defining that. So we were looking at some very classical details and got a lot accomplished, opened up a little bit, made some pocket doors in a few places, and just kind of made some good open changes that we all made quickly and decided on the spot before we go down the construction path. And that's the key. The key word here is before.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah, pocket doors, amazing things. I think when you're looking at design, one thing we don't on the construction side take enough thought about, and you kind of referenced it with on your alt wall and stuff, but we don't think about outlet placement, switch placement, light placement, because we just think like, oh, like we need this many cam lights in here, switches, certain amount of outlets, and we don't think about the placement and what that actually does to the ebb and flow of a room. That just one of those things being off a little bit can completely disrupt the design element without even really trying. And it's pretty amazing how just looking at a little detail of like where that stuff's going to be at, instead of just saying, oh, this is code, it needs to be this, so we just spec it at that and that is what it is.
And, we also, even just today in today's conversation, we, we're figuring out where are we going to pull the gas lines in? Okay. You have to have a plan and figure out what each space is in order to figure out where you want to have that gas line end. So, and, we want to have a fire pit that's with gas. We want to have a gas line brought in for the outside patio for a built-in barbecue area or a kitchen area. And then we're having propane underground. And, there's just a million different levels of things that you have to add to it. So it's really important when we can all walk through and kind of make some decisions early on and move forward from there before we go down a path of construction. And the best way to do that in a renovation, and especially a historical renovation, is to take things down to the studs, pull out the bad plaster, open it up. You know, we're keeping the windows. We're just changing out. We're getting wavy glass and keeping it in line with the period. But and insulating obviously everything. But we talked about some really important things today. So when you go back and you restore something, you're foaming the ceiling and you're making it airtight. So you have to talk about, if there's one gas fireplace, the rest are all wood burning, you have to have a vent. You have to have the air coming in from the outside. How are we going to do that and keep it historical, or at least looking historical? So these are great conversations, and the owner's really knowledgeable about building because he builds all kinds of things. But it was really fun to have his wife there and kind of like move through the whole process of, okay, now let's talk about this problem, and these are the solutions, and you guys tell us what you're most comfortable with. And then it was great. It was really awesome.
I love that. And then you had referenced about documentation earlier. What does that look like after today's meeting, or yesterday? I think you said this morning. Like what does it look like to just not say, oh, awesome, we're all on the same page and move on? What does that look like for you?
I love that you asked that. So the next step is the architecture team is going to update a few of the bigger changes that we discussed today. Mainly just no door here, pocket door there, that kind of thing. We're taking out an old staircase that there's already 2 other staircases, so it doesn't really need this third one, and it's a tiny one. So we decided we're going to take that out, and then we were going to just make some changes to that location. And but the powder room there was going to be too small, so we were going to open that powder room up. So the architect said, "Hey, I'll make those changes." He's going to send them over to me. And then we're going to take those new documents and then we're going to do all of our elevations and tag all of our walls for everything that we're doing. And then I'm going to create an RCP plan, lighting plan for the entire space. And so we discussed who's responsible for what before we left the meeting. And that's really the biggest thing. When we start on any job, big or small, the first thing we do is we have a conversation with the architecture group and we say, let's make a list of who's going to be responsible for what. So we make that list and everybody is very clear who's responsible for doing what tasks. So the architect said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make those changes to some of the documents that we just discussed. And then he's going to send them to us. And then we're going to finish out all of the specifications of all of the finishes. So we'll do a finish schedule. And then we'll do elevations of all of those walls. So if we're doing molding or specialty molding, which we are in this case in different locations, we want to make sure that all of that's documented and everything is tagged. Very, very easy. A 2-year-old could read our documents. We want to make sure that everybody understands what's what. And that is really what the biggest part of the job is for interior design group. You want to make sure that you're documenting everything in your documents that you're going to be handing over, which then get incorporated into the whole set, which then get built off of. And that's where all the mistakes happen.
And I'm sure doing that at scale when you're talking multifamily, where the problems can compound really fastly if you let them. By doing that, you really simplify that build process phase by phase by phase. It's pretty much the same thing then.
Yeah. And I'll tell you a really great little story. We got a call out of the blue for a stadium job. Okay. A very, very big stadium job. And we thought it was kind of a joke. Like we weren't really sure it was real because they didn't mention a referral. So I get on the call and we're basically talking and, I said, how did you find us? And he said, like 8 years before, he had worked on a building doing a renovation and we were the IB firm and he was actually doing the construction and he worked off of our documents and he thought they were the best documents he had ever worked with. And he literally put our name, telephone number, and information into like a log. And we got a call out of the blue. He said, I knew this was a big job and I didn't want to work with anyone that wasn't going to do a good job on documents. And we got the job handed to us because of that. It was a complete renovation of all the major suites of a stadium. And it involved entrances and involved individual suites and corporate suites, very, very large project. And all of their not only restrooms, but all of their amenity areas for those suites for all of the food services. So it was a big job. And we did I loved that job. It was a really fun job and really enjoyed working on that. And we're still working with them to this day.
Awesome. All because you did it right.
Yep.
A project 8 years prior.
Yep. on a renovation that was a small job at the time,
Hmm.
by the way.
Which leaves you never know who's watching, who's paying attention, who's writing your information down. I mean, people can write it down for the exact opposite reason as well.
Yeah. So true. Yeah. And you know, we we only say we're only as good as our last job because every job is equally important. Every job you show up 110% and you give it everything you have, and you work with what you have, and people will make changes. Sometimes clients will make a change, and you work with whatever you're given, and you make it as best to your ability. You make it effective and cost effective and everything else. And you really try to, fine tune the elements that we work with and the cost involved in those. And that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, I think design with my experience of working with that is it's one thing that pays for itself.
Yeah.
Like if you hire somebody that knows what they're doing, they will save you money in the grand scheme of the project.
Yeah. I had a lot of times, obviously, construction costs are so high right now. And so everyone asks us to BE right away. And what we tell them and what we do automatically is we come to the table when we're showing finishes. We have the price, what we call the purchase price of the contractor on the back of the tile, on the back of the wood floor, whatever it is, so that people are making a conscious decision to choose something that they like and also understand what the price is while we're moving through the process. So if I'm showing you 4 tiles for the unit bathrooms, and one tile is $2 and another tile is like $5.70, times that by 500 and something units, it's a very big cost savings if you're going to go. And they almost identically look the same. Might just be a little bit of a different size difference, but the color might be similar. We can save hundreds of thousands of dollars by reducing the cost of one tile.
Yeah.
Same thing with cabinetry in the kitchen. You know, we may not want to have, unless it's sort of a condo or higher level, you know, we may not want to have like built-in pantries or things that are much more costly when it comes to cabinetry. We may not want to have as many drawers, all of the things that kind of like jack the price up really quickly. So what we typically do is we take the architect's drawing and we redline it, and we may extend the run so that the wall can be more parallel for a piece of furniture, looking at how someone's actually going to live in the unit. So we do that a lot. We redline, we take a look at what might be a better, extension of the wall, shorten the wall, move this door a little bit, looking at all of those little sort of things before construction, before we even, when we're pricing it out. So to save a lot of money.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've all been there where you walk into a place and it's just like nothing makes sense.
Right.
And then you walk into a place and you're just like, everything just makes sense. Like the walls, the doors, like that doesn't happen by accident, by no means.
No. And what an architect comes up with may not be the best scenario for someone actually living in the space. So, we've had situations where, you have a very long hallway. Well, how are you going to get a big sectional couch down that narrow hallway into the living space unless the couch comes apart? So you kind of have to think about, how things are going to evolve and people moving in and where they're going to place their furniture and what makes it the most. I mean, people ultimately rent the unit. So that's what they're most interested in. They're going to be sold on what the amenities are from a rental standpoint. All the jazzy amenities that we add, from game rooms to, big lounges with TVs and big fancy things. Those are great, but they're really looking at the unit and envisioning how are they going to live in that space. So we want to make it most effective space-wise for whoever the tenant's going to be.
Awesome. I love it. This has been a fantastic conversation here today. Your knowledge of this and experience definitely comes through 100%. So, for all the construction champions listening out there, if they wanted to connect with you, learn more about what you do, where's the best places for them to do that?
You can always reach us through our website, which is msainteriors.com. Or you can certainly email me at marcy@msainteriors.com. And I'd be happy to connect you with our team and chat with you about any jobs or even questions that you may have in the construction industry.
Awesome. And do you guys operate nationwide? What does okay?
We
Awesome.
do. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you for taking the time and being on the show today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I really loved it. I love talking shop. So thanks.
I love it too. It's why, like I said, this is one of my favorite things I get to do now. So, all right, construction champions, another episode in the bag where Marcy brought up one of the things that is so critical to a project coming through, and it's documentation. And she elaborated on that, we can document stuff really well, but if we don't collaborate and have the conversations and actually assign tasks to people so they know what to do and when to do it, it can all fall apart. So when you're looking at these projects and you're like, man, I document this stuff so great. I want you to ask yourself, what happens after that documentation? Because that is what she said made a construction champion, but most of our conversation happened after the documentation. It was about what does she do in her company to make that documentation the cornerstone, the foundation of their process. There's a lot of stuff that had to happen afterwards. So you might think while you're on that project and you're documenting everything very wellly, but a lot of times that's not being communicated. You're not having the conversations with either the customer or the other stakeholders, the people that are there doing other parts of the project, and that you might as well just light the documentation on fire. Like if you're just documenting it and not doing anything with it other than holding it to yourself because you're so proud in this documentation that you've done, it's still going to cause the project to fail. The goal is to just continue to be setting up for the next step. Having those conversations in the documentation is just the first step in the entire build. So when you get that right, make sure you get everything else right. And construction champions, until next time, be the champion you were meant to be.